Thank you very much. Hopefully with that introduction, nobody was expecting somebody bigger. Okay, so today's talk is going to be on making the impossible possible. Has anybody ever read a book or gone to a seminar on goal setting and then set a goal that you didn't achieve? Yeah, I've done that lots of times. So who'd like to know the one key that's been fundamental every single time I've done something that most of us think is impossible?
Yes.
Okay. The most common question I get when people see me and they hear how much weight I've lifted is, how can someone your size lift so much weight? And I might need the remote. Yep, I'm not psychic yet. Okay, so this is my friend Billy. In 2009, he won the Natural Mr. Universe. So he's 100 kilograms, pure muscle. He's what most people think a powerlifter should look like. But when Billy came to our powerlifting club, he was huge, but he wasn't strong because he couldn't lift as much as myself or my training partner who only weighed 60 kilograms. So size doesn't matter. Okay, does age matter? Well, this is another one of my friends. This is Max Bristow. When this video was shot, he was 66 years of age. He weighed 69 kilograms. And here he's attempting to break the World Masters record. So I think Max proves age doesn't matter.
Wow.
So what does matter? Well, quantum physics tells us that it's energy. Now this is my car, it's an RX-8. And the reason I love this car is because it's kind of like me. It's small, it's sporty, it's only got a little engine, but it's got heaps and heaps of power. Now most car engines, their power is directly proportional to the size of the engine. But this car has a very, very unique engine. It's only 1.3 litres in volume, but it can put out the same amount of power as a 6-litre V8 engine. So I was giving a talk recently to a group of personal trainers, and at the end of the talk, one of them asked me, how can you stay so focused? And I really had trouble answering the question because I didn't really need to make any effort to stay focused. I was driven. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And it reminded me of a story that I heard a couple of years ago about this monk. And the monk's meditating by a river. And a traveller comes along and he says to the monk, I'd like to be your student. And the monk says, great, why? And the traveller says, well, I'd like to find enlightenment. So the monk said, okay, well come over to the river here and put your head underwater. So the traveller puts his head underwater. He thinks it's a bit strange, but he does. And he's holding it underwater, and he starts to kind of need to breathe. And he goes to lift his head up. But the monk puts his hand down on his head and holds him underwater. And he's struggling and fighting, but the monk's holding him down. And that's where I was about 2 years ago. I was drowning. I felt like I was underwater. Because it's our daily disciplines in life that create where we are. Now, I've been on both these paths. The upper path with some simple disciplines, repeated year after year, day after day in the gym, they led me to being an Australian powerlifting champion. But at the same time, I was making some simple errors in judgment, repeated over time, which led to a bad habit, which led to an addiction. And I got to the point where I'd had enough, because I'd realised that neither of these paths were me. But I had to take responsibility for what I'd created in my life, because I believe that I'm responsible for everything that happens in my life through either my actions or my inactions. And there's a story that I love which points to taking ultimate responsibility for our lives, and it's the story of the little soul and the sun. And it's this little soul, And the soul goes to God and he's all excited and he says, God, I know who I am. I'm the light. And God says, that's right, you are the light. And the soul goes away all happy. And then, because he's excited because he's figured out what all the other souls in the kingdom were trying to work out, what he really was. But after a while, he kind of thinks, well, I'd like to be what I really am. So he goes back to God and says, God, I'd like to be the light, or know what it's like to be the light. And God says, that's wonderful. You mean you actually want to be what you already are? And the soul says, well, yes, it's one thing to know what I am, but to actually be what I am, that's another thing altogether. And God said, well, there's a little problem, because I've created nothing but what you are. All the other souls here, they're perfect beings of love and light, just like you. You're surrounded in light. So how to know yourself as the light, that's the question. And the soul said, well, you're God, think of something. And God says, well, actually, I already have. Says, what we do is we surround you in darkness, and then you can know yourself as the light. And that's where I was. I was in darkness. Trying to find out who I really was. And I realized the darkness wasn't me. And I started doing yoga and meditation every day. I was determined and desperate to find the light. And I was doing some pretty full-on yoga, working up to holding asanas for 20 minutes at a time to try and open my heart. And then one day after doing that, I went to a 12-hour celebration of, it's called Maha Shivaratri, which was started at 6 o'clock at night and went to 6 o'clock in the morning. And there's lots of meditation, lots of yoga, lots of chanting, lots of praying. And at the end of that, we got to write on a piece of paper what we wanted more in life, what was the thing we wanted most, and we would throw it into the fire. And I wrote that I wanted to have my heart opened and to find true love. And I threw it in the fire. And I went back to my parents' place on the Sunshine Coast, because that's where the celebration was. And I went to bed because I'd been up for 48 hours. And I couldn't sleep, I was buzzing. And I got up, no one was home because my parents were in Tasmania. And I sat at my father's desk and I was just reading a book and the phone rang. I thought, well, I might as well answer it, I'm sitting here. So I picked it up and it was the furniture store. And they said, your lounge has arrived. I thought, oh, that's for my parents. So I randomly grabbed a piece of paper from under some magazines, turned it over, wrote a quick note, hang up. And then I turned the piece of paper over. And it was a couple of emails from my brother and his wife to my father about something that had happened a couple of weeks ago where I was quite upset. And the general message of the email was that I had to, well, not had to, but suggesting that it would be a good idea if I went and met this person called Hercules. And I thought, who prints out emails anyway? Why did I pick that piece of paper? Why am I sitting here right now? After what I just asked for, are you trying to tell me something? I got the message. It still took me a month to call Hercules. But that started my journey to being here. And I discovered that I absolutely love what I'm doing here. You know? How is energy created? Energy is created in our passion. It's what we're excited about, what we love doing. That's where we get our energy from. So, the little soul. He was talking to God. And God said, well, there's many aspects of being the light. There's been loving, there's been compassionate, there's been generous, and there's been forgiving. And the little soul said, well, I would like to know myself as forgiveness. And God said, well, that is a wonderful aspect of the light. Only one problem. As I said before, all these other souls are perfect beings of love and light. There's nothing and no one to forgive. So the soul was getting a bit frustrated now. And then a friendly soul came along and said, I'll help you. And the little soul said, you will? How? And the friendly soul says, well, what we'll do is we'll go down to Earth and we'll incarnate as human beings. And one day, I'm going to do this really horrible thing to you, and you can forgive me. And the little soul says, you will? You perfect being of love and light, you'll lower yourself to do this horrible thing? Why? And the friendly soul says, well, because I love you. But you are right about one thing, so you have to promise me something. The little soul says, anything. He says, well, I will have to lower myself. I'll have to pretend to be something that I'm not. I'll have to pretend so hard to be able to do this horrible thing that there's a good chance I'll forget who I really am. So in that moment I do this horrible thing to you, you have to remember who I am and remind me. Otherwise there's a chance we'll both forget and we'll be stuck here to play the game over and over again until some other friendly soul comes to show us the way. So, the soul went off into his next lifetime looking for anyone to forgive. And whenever they came along, they gave him the opportunity to be the light. So today, I'd like to ask you to remember who you really are. Any time that darkness enters your life, just see it as an opportunity to be the light. So the monk finally pulls the traveller's head out of water and he's gasping for air. And the monk says to the traveller, in those last moments, what did you want more than anything else? And the traveller said, I wanted air, I wanted to breathe. So the monk said, well, when you want enlightenment, as much as you just wanted to breathe, you will have it. Now, when I first heard that story, I thought, that's a little bit extreme. Maybe that's why I'm not enlightened yet. But when I look back at all those moments in my life, when I broke national records, when I won national titles, when I was determined to overcome addiction, it was something that I wanted more than anything else in that moment. I didn't need to do anything to focus. I was driven. So what's driving you? I was at a meditation a couple of weeks ago, and I was in quite a good state, so I thought, well, while I'm here, I might as well ask a question. So I said, God, what's the point of all this? You know, I really love this speaking, but, you know, what's the point? What am I doing? And he said, well, it's kind of like you're building an ark, but it's not for animals. It's not even for people's bodies. It's an ark for people's souls. Kind of like what Noah had to do. And kind of like Noah, not everyone's going to understand. Not everyone's going to get it. But you have to build it anyway. I said, you sure you got the right guy here? But that's what is exciting me. That's what drives me. That's what gets me out of bed. That's what excites me when I come to give talks. I'm building something that's going to help people. And I love motivating and inspiring people to be the best versions of them that they can be. You know? And as part of doing that, I have to be the best version of me that I can be. And my favourite line from Braveheart is that everyone dies, but not everyone really lives. So today I want to leave you with this thought. What would it take for you to really live? We all have the free will to make what we will of our life. What will you do with that freedom? What will you give for just one chance to take responsibility for your life and fight for a different kind of life? A life you were born to live, a life full of love and happiness, joy and laughter, energy and excitement. A life of true freedom and empowerment. A life where you discover your true gifts and your purpose, and you give that gift with everything you have. Thank you.